The title of the presentation is 9 out of 10 companies fail. Why fail when you can succeed? And what I'm going to talk about is describe what many of the venture-backed companies go through, why it is so hard for them to succeed, and also chart a little bit of the way on how you can build a very successful, fast-growing, profitable company doing it slightly differently. If anybody expects that by the end of the lecture you will know everything you need to know, I apologize, you wouldn't. There's a lot of stuff. But at least you will see some of the things. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Yonatan Stern. And a little bit of my history, I studied computer science at the Technion through the Atuda Academite. Then I went to somewhere that at the time was highly secretive. It's now called 8200. And there I did my master's degree as well in computer science. And after I left the army, I started a company called Roche Intelligence Systems, which I will describe what it is later. When I left Roche, I started another company called CardScan. And I'm very proud of what I did at CardScan, mainly because it's the only company where I can describe what it does very, very simply. So this is what CardScan is all about. It's a card scanner. You take a business card, you stick it into the scanner, it reads it, it figures out what's the name, what's the title, what's the company, the address, and so forth, and builds an address book. As simple as can be. The company was very successful, and out of it, I started another company. Out of it means we spun it off. CardScan was very profitable, so we took the profits from CardScan, started another company called ZoomInfo. Those of you from ZoomInfo, please raise your hand. So, yes, ZoomInfo in Israel sits in this building. And we will talk a little bit about what ZoomInfo does. ZoomInfo was also profitable and successful. And out of it, we started another company called Bizo. Bizo was an advertising targeting system that allowed companies to target ads based on business profile. So, for example, if you were an executive at a Fortune 500, we can tell you, you can show an ad for that person. Or if you're a CFO, we knew it, and we can target ads. So Bizo was sold to a competitor of ZoomInfo called LinkedIn for $175 million. ZoomInfo was sold, merged with another company for $800 million. And altogether, all my companies generated over $1 billion in exits. After I left ZoomInfo, I sold it. I thought that it will be a good use of my time to potentially start to tell other people or show other people how you can build a successful company using the same principles that we used in CardScan, in ZoomInfo, in Bizo, and all the other places. And I call it a residency program. It's called the SmartUp Academy, and as the name implies, it is kind of a school. And very much like if you study to be a doctor, and that's why I use that graphics. If you study to be a doctor, you learn for 6 years, you pass all the tests, and nobody here in this room would dare going to such a doctor. You really want them to spend a few years, using their hands and experience to treat patients. And the same goes for companies. It's a profession that you can learn, and you can practice, and you can understand, but it takes the time and the practice. So it's not going to be, 2-3 lectures and you know how to build a company. This is something that I will explain later how it's going to work. So people ask me, why don't you write a book? And there are 2 answers. Answer number 1 is, I am writing a book. So there will be a book, hopefully, if I can at all the time and write the book. You will see later some of the chapters of the book. But even if I wrote a book, and I'm going to write a book, you will read it, you'll say, wow, that's really cool. And the moment you encounter a real-life problem, it doesn't look like what the book says, and you will ignore it, and you will do whatever. So I believe that the only way of learning a profession is by practicing it. And I think it's going to be more effective to have both the book and the program. So we already started, because I wanted to check that the idea works. And we had a few companies in the SmartUp program. The first one is a company called Altnext. And I'm very proud of it because we failed. So, you know, if you always succeed, then something is wrong with you. So Altnext was a nice failure. And we shut it down this year, right? Yes. So I won't go into the details, but basically we just couldn't figure out how to make money in the company. And after a while, we decided it wasn't worth it. Opster, the people from Opster, please raise your hand. Here there are some. I'll talk about Opster later on, so I won't spend the time right now. Bioform, Renana. So it's another company that is was already a working company, and I became a partner in there, and I'm helping them move to the next level. And the same goes with TikTok. All of you probably got the messages from TikTok because we use the platform in order to register. A very successful company, and we are partners with them. In addition, we started incubating some companies internally. And the reason was, again, we wanted to check if the ideas that I'm going to talk about can really work in real life. And I'll talk about BeeBuddy later on, so you will know what it is. And the other company is a spin-off from Bioform. Bioform deals with clinical trials data. They process clinical trials data. And there's a lot of information there, so we created another company called clinical.site. I won't go into the details in here, but as you can see, we are already practicing what we want to teach to verify that indeed these things work. So why do 9 out of 10 venture-backed companies fail? And the answer might surprise you. They just don't have enough time to succeed. And why don't they have enough time? So to understand why they don't have enough time, we need to understand how VCs, which is the major backer of many companies in the world, how they work. Because if I understand how they work, you will start to understand where is the time pressure coming from. So here's how venture funds work. So the money is not their money. They also have investors. Many of you don't know that, but they raise money as much as you guys raise money. They raise it mainly from pension funds, insurance companies, and so forth. And these are the limited partners of the venture fund. Then you have the general partner, which are the people you talk to. Okay? And they take the money. And remember that this is all about money. So they take money, they manage it with the promise to the investors, which is the pension funds and insurance companies, that they will return the money with a profit. How do they do it? They invest in many startups. But startups are not money. Right? They need to return money. So in order to return money, they need to convert the shares that they have in the company back into money. The way to do that is by an exit. And there are two types of exits. The lucrative one, which is to go public, preferably in the US, in NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange or others, or be acquired by another company. Because these are the two ways that venture funds can convert their investment in a company into money that they can return. Now, what is the timeline that they have? So in inception, they collect the money from the investors. And in the year 1, 2, and 3, they invest it in companies. So they make most of their commitments in the early years of the fund, year 1, 2, and 3. Then in year 4, 5, and 6, they usually invest in repeat investments. So if it is Series A that they invest, then the company raises Series B, Series C, they have to participate, so they keep the money. Usually they invest about 1/3 of their money in the first few years, and then they keep the rest of it for repeat investments. And then usually year 7 is the time of a fund. So they raise money and they tell the investors that in 7 years they will return the money plus the profits. Well, that's too tight, so usually they get an extension for 2, 3 years more. So usually the time that it takes is about 10 years that they want to take the money from pension funds and return money to pension funds. That's the timeline. By the way, just as an example, remember that I said that CardScan, then I did ZoomInfo, then I did Bizo. So clearly it took more than 10 years. And my investors in CardScan kept saying, so when are we going to get the money back? And I said, when it comes. So they weren't very happy. So if 9 out of 10 fail, how do VCs make money? So they make money by having an exit that is very, very big. Okay. A Facebook, a LinkedIn, something like that. So very big exit usually mean that they go public, do an IPO in the USA on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. That's the big exit. That's where they make the big money. That's what you read in the newspapers and everybody is very excited about. So in the last 10 years, about 12,000 startup companies were founded in Israel. 12,000. How many companies went public? 68 companies went public in NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. 1 out of 200 had a big exit. Not 1 out of 10. But these are the big exits. Clearly, there are other exits. There are companies that are acquired. But it's not that easy to make a big exit. Now, why so few companies go public? So let's understand that. For a company to go public, it needs to meet certain criteria. Usually, some significant revenues. Okay, you can't go public with a company that generates $5 million or $10 million. You need to make more money. So usually the threshold that people talk about is about $100 million. It needs to be a company that keeps growing because otherwise the valuation is not very high. So ZoomInfo is growing at about 40% year over year, and the valuation is, takes it into account. And preferably profitable. When I say preferably, it's because in the last 10 years, for whatever reason, all you needed to do is say, okay, if we just get there, we will be profitable. But I think that the market now is also changed. So this is what you need in order to go public. So what I wanted to do is just build a very simple model to let you see what does it mean to be, meet these criteria. So let's take a SaaS product, doesn't matter what it is. And let's say that you charge $10,000 per license per year, okay? Very typical, nice company, comes a customer, $10,000 per year. And let's say year 1 and 2, they do product development, no sales, also very typical. And year 3, they start with, boom, 100 customers right away, okay? Very nice company. And they grow 40% year over year, like clockwork, okay? And they have perfect renewal rate of 100%. Any customer who ever bought keeps buying year after year, $10,000. So here's how it looks. Okay? Year 1, as we said, 100 customers. Year 2, you grow 40%, right? So it's 140 plus the 100, so 240. Year 3, believe me, I did the numbers. It's Excel, no bugs. You can see that it gets to year 10, 3,500 customers. Year 13, about 10,000 customers. If I convert that to dollars, so you get to the 100 million, the venerable $100 million that you need only on year 13. Remember the timeline. But what is the amount of investment that is needed to build a company like that? So I did some typical examples, assumptions. Usually in high-tech companies, software, there's nothing there. So about 70% of the expenses of the company is manpower, salaries. And to foster this rapid growth, the company will grow the team at about the same pace as it grows revenues. And it will start generating cash profits only in year 12. I won't bore you with all the details because it's a presentation. And it needs about $100 million in aggregate in the first 11 years because it will become profitable only in year 12. What that means is that the founders and the CEO are in constant, continuous chase of raising money. That's a very typical successful company. But what if life is a bit harder? Okay, so I leave the same assumptions at the beginning, but instead of growing 40%, grow 30%, which is still phenomenal. For 12, 13 years, it grows 30% like clockwork, year over year. And realistic renewal rate, remember, we're talking about 10 years. You can't expect the company to keep buying for 10 years. So I put 80%. And here's what you get. Year 13, remember, here we had year 13 was already 10,000 customers. We only have 3,500. And revenues, accordingly, will be only 36 million. So we'll just, by doing the growth a little bit more realistic, you see how difficult it is to be a $100 million company growing rapidly. It's not that simple, which is why you see so few companies going public. So why do they fail? They fail because there is a very strong drive. We need to get to an exit. So I did the word exit in capital letters to explain that this is really the core thing in here. If you drive for an exit and you have a very limited time, 10 years, 12 years, doesn't matter. It's a very short time, as I showed you. Okay? Then what companies do is they kind of build in advance for growth because they need to grow fast. So they hire 30 engineers up front. They hire the marketing team, the sales team, all on day one. They keep hiring people all the time because they need to support the hypothetical growth. In many cases, these newly hired people are not very effective. Honestly, I never understood how you can hire 20 people at once, and make them productive right away. It's just very, very difficult to do. And what that also does is it creates a very high burn rate, cash flow burn rate, very early. The problem here is that hiring people is not easy to change, which means if you have 50 people and you spend, I don't know, $10 million a year, if you want to reduce expenses, you need to lay off people. Somehow people get angry when you lay them off, and other people in the company also get angry. So it's not very flexible. People you hire, you have them. You can't say, okay, this year is bad, so this part of the room, please leave, come back in 2 years. It just doesn't work. So this is a very rigid expense rate that you can't play with. And the drive for growth creates pressure, pressure, pressure. Now, because of the high cash burn rate, you need to be raising money all the time. But what happens if sales don't grow as fast as I showed it. Well, in that case, they have difficulties in raising additional money. They need to reduce expenses, right? At some point, if you don't have money to pay salaries, you need to do something. And what you do is you start laying off. Most companies do it piecemeal. Why? Because you deal with people's lives. So let's say the company has 50 people. You have sales of, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million a year, which is not enough. You have difficulty raising money. You see that the money is going to run out, in 6 months, 9 months. What do? You say, well, let's lay off 10 people. Then a few months go and revenues don't grow fast. So you say, oh, let's tell another 10 people lay off. And what you do is you start getting the morale and the confidence of people in the company and outside the company to wear off. And the company spirals downwards. What happens at the end is 2 outcomes, kind of. Either they shut down altogether, so they run out of money. People don't like to work for no money, so they shut down. Or they get stuck in what people call Death Valley or become the Walking Dead. What is the Walking Dead? It's kind of a company that barely alive. They kind of able to raise a little bit of money from existing investors who are willing to support it until good times, but it's just kind of going nowhere. That's what we mean by 9 out of 10 venture-backed companies fail. Fail means not necessarily just shutting down, but also going nowhere. So basically, they don't have enough time to succeed. Hope I made the point on that one. So I promise you I'll tell you a little bit about my company, so now is a good time to start. So what we did there, we developed an expert system to help field technicians of complicated equipment diagnose and fix machines in the field. So I put here a real example. This is an MRI machine. And the company was founded in 1985, right after I left the Army, with myself and 2 founders who were friends from the Army. We had offices. We raised money from Elron, from Uzziah Galil, Dan Tolkovsky, names that you guys don't know, but you better know. And we grew up to have offices in Jerusalem, where the headquarters was, in Boston and in Brussels. We were about 60 people by 1992, my last year as CEO. And we had really great customers. We were Xerox, Varian, Applied Materials, Lam Research. All of these are companies in the IC, the integrated circuit development, and also in the medical field, Siemens Medical, Philips Medical, and many others. So we were a really good company. And sales growth was pretty much what you saw, a little bit slower, but very, very typical sales growth. First 2 years, no revenues, $500,000, million, $1.7 million, and so forth, okay? And the company was losing money, like I showed you before. And my job as a CEO was to raise money all the time. I raised $11 million, 4 rounds, 6 different VCs. And raising money for a company that is not a high flyer, it's just a typical company, not bad, not good, was exhausting. Because you have to keep telling them why you're going to have an exit with a company that is okay. It's a nice company, but it's okay. So I had an aha moment, an ingenious idea. I said, how about if we become profitable? So I'll tell you a secret. There are 2 ways of becoming profitable. You can have more revenues than your expenses, or you can have your expenses lower than your revenues. That's it. I tried to look for a 3rd solution, couldn't find it. Now, getting more revenues is the desirable outcome, but believe me, we tried. It's not easy. Reducing your expenses is under your control. So I said, okay. I tried to bring the expenses to below revenues, which means closing the office in Belgium, laying off people, all of that stuff that needs to be done. And I started doing it. I brought it to the board, and here's what happened. Life is hard. So I was politely asked to hand over the CEO role to somebody more capable than I am. So I left. I didn't have a choice. Okay, I was asked politely to leave. So that was it. And my conclusion from that was that as long as you are not profitable, you're not generating cash from your customers, you are at the mercy of your investors. It's as simple as that. So I talked for, I don't know, about half an hour about why companies fail, and I'm sure you're not here to learn that. You want to know how not to fail. And the secret, if you didn't already get it, I will spell it out. You have to change the goal of the company from exit to profitability. And when I say profitability, I mean positive cash flow. For those of you who are not CPAs, it sounds the same. It's not. Basically, what I want to tell you is you need to add money to the bank every month. That's nirvana. Every month, you want to add $100,000 to the bank account, $1 million to the bank account, $1 to the bank account, something. Instead of drawing, you want to add. That's called positive cash flow. Simple Hebrew. Make money. Agreed? Okay. So why profitability? I'll ask you a question. What's the difference between a company that generates a profit of $1 million a year to a company that loses $1 million a year? And don't answer $2 million, which is the correct mathematical answer, but the wrong business answer. So a company that loses $1 million a year, you can easily figure out when they're going to go out of business. If they have $2 million in the bank, they have 2 years to live. A company that generates $1 million a year can live forever. Well, many of you seem to be old enough to understand that living forever seems pretty cool, right? The young people don't really understand that, but people at my age understand living forever seems like a really good thing. So they have time to make mistakes. And that's really, really important. As you will see, very rarely companies go straight to success. You have to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you need time to make mistakes. You have less pressure. Because if you don't need to go and raise money, you don't have the clock ticking. Okay, if we don't accomplish that, we're going to close down in, I don't know, April of next year. It's much less pressure. And you have freedom to make decisions. And don't underestimate freedom. What do I mean by freedom? Life is hard, which means many times the direction you wanted to take, the assumptions you made are wrong. When you have investors that you told them you're going to do X, and suddenly you come and you say, well, X doesn't work, I need to do Y. It's just another friction you have to go through. If the company is making money, you sit with your managers and you say, well, X is not working, well, let's try Y, and that's about it, because you are a boss. You don't need to explain to anybody else. So, why is life hard? So for those of you who speak Latin, you know what terra incognita is, but who here speaks Latin? No. Ah, see, I have two at least.
The unknown.
Right. So terra, same word as territory, means land, area. Incognita, recognize, right? Unknown territory. That's what terra incognita means. And I give you here a map from 1909. The white areas are areas that, at that time, the white men in Europe didn't know what's in there. Especially the center of Africa. But as you can see, many, many places were not yet known to the white people. So building a company is like exploring new territory. That's the reality of it. You come up with a new idea. You try to get to customers you never talked to before. It's terra incognita. It's exciting, it's rewarding, but it's scary and dangerous. A lot of explorers didn't come back. A lot of startup companies never came back. You need training, you need preparation, and you need resources. And it takes time. You're not going to go to explore Central Africa in 2 months. Okay, so the notion of time, that you need time in order to succeed, is really critical. And above all, if you go to explore Africa or Alaska or whatever, and you need to take food with you for 2 years, it's much harder than if you learn how you can eat in Africa or how you can eat in Alaska. What you can eat, how do you eat? Very, very important. Or if I take the metaphor to business, how do you make money, basically, right? So you don't need to kill buffaloes, but you do need to generate money. So when my daughter was in school, and I won't disclose which one it was, because they're all sitting here, she got homework. It's called the Oregon Trail. And it was a very interesting homework, and I remember it till today. So you have to go from Missouri to Oregon. It's 3,000 kilometers, and you do 20 kilometers a day. And her assignment was to figure out the following. What do you need to take for a family of 4 when you have 1 wagon, and you need to take food for 6 months, clothing, tools, guns, seeds, all in 1 wagon? And we had there, they said, the seed takes that much and everything. And I remember sitting with her and going over it and figuring to myself, boy, this is tough. You only have 1 wagon, that's it. That's all you can take with you. That's terra incognita. So what is the startup terra incognita? So you need time to figure out who your customers are, how to reach them. We'll talk a lot about this problem of how you reach your customers, what to tell them, how to make them pay attention, how to make them buy and pay. Remember, at the end, you need to eat. At what price, how to build your team, what products to build, how to build, blah, 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 on and on and on and on. Okay. I want to focus just on the 2 or 3 items at the top. The issue of how do you reach your customers, and what do you tell them? So I'll share with you an example. So in the 90s, a company came up with a new product called portable document. Does anybody here knows what a portable document is? Okay, not surprising. Does anybody here know what Acrobat is? Yes. A few. Does anybody here know what PDF is? Okay. PDF stands for Portable Document Format. So they came up with this concept, Adobe obviously. It took me 3 years to figure out what the hell are they talking about. What is a portable document for whatever? You pick up the paper. What do you do with a portable document? Just to show you something that today seems obvious, and notice nobody here knew what a portable document is. Because when companies come up with a new concept, it's extremely difficult to explain. I want you guys to try to explain to somebody without showing them what a Velcro is. Just try to explain what a Velcro is. Okay? It's difficult. It's very difficult. So you need to reach out to people who never heard about you, who have no patience for you the same way that you have no patience for anything. You are bombarded with messages. You want them to pay attention to something they don't understand. and you somehow expect them to reach to their pocket and pay you money. It's very, very difficult. So let's talk about ZoomInfo. So the vision was a database of information about people and companies. And we wanted to do it, we're talking now about the year 2000, okay? 22 years ago, which starts to tell you my age, I guess. And what we wanted to do is build it with technology, because I'm a technologist, by crawling company websites and news sites and extracting information from text and putting it in a database. So that was the idea. The company was founded in 2000 by myself with 2 developers. Spun off from CardScan, as I said. So we basically funded the company by a loan from CardScan to ZoomInfo. And we started selling licenses in the year 2002 to recruiters. So our first market was recruiters. Why recruiters? Because we're talking the year 2002. There was no database of information about people who are not job seekers. So executive recruiters wanted to find a very successful VP of sales. There was no database of VP of sales they can go after. And so it was a very lucrative niche for us. The data was horrible. Trust me, I developed it. It was really bad. But it was better than anything else, and LinkedIn didn't exist yet. So we became profitable in 2003, and we generated cash since that day. So let's look at the revenue growth. Not what you expected. So we grew like nuts from 2002 all the way to 2007. And then we crashed. Why did we crash? A whole host of things, but mainly because we tried to do a pivot. So we sold to recruiters, and we said the recruiting market is relatively small, and LinkedIn started in 2004 and started to compete fairly effectively against us. So we wanted to move from selling to recruiters to selling to salespeople. Same product. No, not the same product. Here's what we discovered in a very painful way. Recruiters wanted to find a needle in the haystack. All they needed is one good candidate. Okay, 5, bring it to the customer will interview them, pick one. But that's all what they wanted, one good candidate. Salespeople wanted the haystack. They kept calling. Recruiters couldn't care less about email address or phone number because they knew how to reach people. And people responded to them. So they called the company, they wanted to talk to Yonatan, the phone was handed, fine. Salespeople wanted a phone number and an accurate phone number because they were making 50, 60 phone calls a day. They wanted to send an email and know that the email arrives at the same person. Our technology didn't have phone numbers and email addresses because they don't show up on websites or news. I didn't know that. When we tried selling, we discovered that our customers became very angry. And they said, your data stinks. So we needed to develop a different solution altogether for that. Something that today, all of the competitors of ZoomInfo are using as well, which was something that I saw from another company called Plaxo. And what they did is they did a barter deal. So if you as a user agreed to give us access to your Outlook, we're going to extract all the information from Outlook, we will give you access to our data. So it's an exchange. And the first time I saw Plaxo was when one of my salespeople came to me and he says, look at that great idea. And I'm like, oh my God, you gave them access to your Outlook? And he says, why not? And I said, it's your Outlook. He says, I'm a salesman. There's nothing in there, okay? And I'm like, okay. So salespeople are not very sensitive to all of that stuff. Took us years to do it. years, you can see in here. Why? Two reasons. Number one, internal disbelief. People didn't want to do that. They said, this is wrong, nobody's going to install it, this is ridiculous, not going to work, blah, blah, blah. It was very hard internally to pull the idea. Second, it was very hard externally to pull the idea. Who's going to install it? It took us a long time to figure it out. So you can see in here that the company was kind of in Death Valley for many years, except for one thing. Remember I said we generated cash all the time. So there are the two very, very important rules that I had at ZoomInfo based on my experience at Roche. Rule number one, always be profitable, always. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. Never. So how do you build a profitable company? There's a methodology for doing so. And the methodology basically deals with every aspect of the company life, from marketing to product development, from sales to operation. It touches everything. It's not one little thing that will make the company profitable. It's a whole different way of thinking about your company. And we call this methodology the SmartUp guiding principle. So if you hear me talk about a guiding principle, it's one of many that we developed over the years on how you build a profitable company. And what we want to do at the SmartUp Academy is show you how to use those principles in your company and how it can affect what you do. So let's start up, because there are many. I will start with just a few of them to show you a little bit about what we're talking about. The first guiding principle, which I think is also the most important one, is what do you do first in your company? And without knowing many of you, I would bet you say, okay, we're going to build the product, right? Because otherwise, what do we have? Wrong. You first sell the product. You don't build it, you sell it. And you will say, how do I do that? We'll talk about it. Okay, so marketing first. That's the first guiding principle, marketing first. So if I ask you what is marketing, I trust many of you will tell me, okay, that's advertising, email campaigns, building brochures, building the website, yada, 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 right? Writing comment material, all kinds of things. But what really is marketing? What is the purpose of marketing? So the purpose of marketing is to change behavior. Sounds bizarre, right? What do you mean by change behavior? So I'm Pepsi, and I want people to buy Pepsi and not Coke. And I spend millions of dollars, and nobody who walks into the store reaches to Coke and says, no, I need to buy Pepsi. If you don't get behavioral change, you have done nothing. So if you can't really measure it, then you're wasting your money. Marketing is about changing behavior. So just looking at you, many of you have kids, okay? How many of you have succeeded in telling your kid, please pick up your clothes from the floor in the evening, right? How many of them succeeded? Now, these are your kids. You say it every single night, and they still don't do it. So you want a stranger to be exposed to something and change behavior. Do you understand the magnitude of what you're trying to do? Now, who do you want to change? So that's mainly for B2B. You think about companies, I'm selling to companies, but it's not true. At the end, there is a human being that you need to change his or her behavior. And how do you change behavior? You must interact with them. It's not a spelling mistake. I on purpose put the hyphen to tell you they need to act. If they don't do anything, you haven't done anything. So that's what marketing is all about. So who are your customers? It's not as simple as you think. Because if you think about your customers as, well, everybody was doing recruiting, okay? In our case, it was recruiters. Well, I'll tell you a secret. When we started, we said we need to go after executive recruiters. Executive recruiters are the people who get paid $100,000 because they go and recruit vice presidents in Fortune 500 companies. So these are the kind of people we wanted to sell to. Then we encountered a consultant. The $1 million that I showed you the first year was because of a consultant we met. He had a group of about 40 HR, VP of HR at very large companies that he was managing, and they would meet once a month and talk about their challenges of working with executive recruiters. And the reason they bought our product was not to recruit, but to audit the executive recruiters they hired. Life is bizarre. Because when the executive recruiter came and said, well, you know, here's a list of 50 top executives we found for you. And they said, all right, let me see. Did you see George Floyd? He's right here around the corner. And did you see? And they got the executive recruiters to be very scared of us because they were able to produce those lists. They didn't want to recruit, by the way, because that was too much work. So they were still happy to pay $100,000 per recruit, but they wanted to feel smart and strong, and they were happy to pay us $10,000 a year in order to accomplish that. So it shows you that what you think about your customers and the reality might not be at all the same. How can you reach them? So in our case, we reached them through a consultant we bumped into somewhere. I don't even remember where. Later on, we became more sophisticated. I'll talk about it. But that was the beginning. What do you tell them? As I said, in this case, they didn't want to recruit. They wanted to audit. And how do you make them respond? Because it made them feel smart. And how do you measure your success? $1 million was a very good measure. And many more questions. So it's really, really difficult to figure out who your early customers and your late customers are. And I will later on talk about the concept of market island. So it's the most important thing you do. And remember, when I talk about marketing, I'm not talking about your press releases and your website and all of that stuff. I'm talking about the entire philosophy and concept of who are your customers, how do you reach out to them, what do you tell them, how do you measure their response. This is what I mean by marketing. Not all the little operations that people confuse as being marketing. One of the things I've seen talking to many, many companies is they believe that if you build this gadget, they will come. I have the best CRM in the world, you know. I just look at it and it fills out all the fields, you know. It's amazing. It's connected to the world. It does everything you want. Show me any company that would go and raise money and then don't tell you their product is the best ever. It does everything you might dream of and then some. And the idea is if you have a really great product, customers will just flock to you. They will just come out of nowhere because they were waiting for it. It's their salvation. So there's a movie called Field of Dreams. If you haven't seen it and you have 2 hours to waste, go and watch it. It's a very funny movie about a guy, a kid, who admires all of these baseball players, you know, from all time, and he wants to see them playing. And his father says, if you build a baseball field, they will come. So this kid is building the baseball field, and he wakes up one morning, and out of nowhere, his heroes come and play baseball for him. Well, life doesn't work this way. You can build a great product. If nobody heard about it, doesn't make a difference. It takes a long time and many repetitions to change behavior. And it's the first thing you do in your company before you develop your product. And what happens is the response to marketing guides what you do. So let's talk a little bit about what a market island is, because it's very, very critical to understand. I already explained to you one market island. Our consultant took us to an island like that. It was 40 companies that he was meeting with every month. And he gave us this island. They had a very different reason why to buy, very different message, and it was one island. An island is a combination of a set of customers and the mechanism to reach out to them. And that you see them responding. Okay? So a market island is the combination of all of these things. It's a set of your customers that you know how to reach them, you know what to tell them, and you can measure their response. And your market is made of many, many, many islands. Yes, they talk to one another and so forth, but really each and every one of them is an island. Now let's think about what many companies do. So they want, the VC say, hey, you have to talk to customers. They say, okay, great. Can you help me? Yes, we have 3 companies in our portfolio. Go and talk to them. So you go and you talk to them, right? Then the brother of your wife has 2 friends who are doing something. So from here to there, you can clobber 5 customers that you can talk to. And you talk to them, and based on that, you think you understand the market. The problem with that is that you haven't developed a systematic marketing. These are the 5 people you talk to, and that's it. There may be 6. That's it. You haven't thought about how do I consistently reach out to potential customers. Because you cannot grow, because your friends don't have more friends, and their friends, it just doesn't grow. You need to find a mechanism that gets you to a much bigger market. Now, how do you do marketing to a product that doesn't exist? And how do you do it on a small budget? So the answer to that is Google. And Google is your best friend. You have to start creating content that your potential prospects are likely to search for. And I'll talk a little bit about the long tail. Again, one of those guiding principles we work with. So the first one I want to discuss is the ZoomInfo directory. Remember, the first customers we had were through that consultant. But that wasn't scaling up. So we needed to do something to scale up. And what we decided to do is do something that today looks to you to be obvious, but at the time was fairly unique. We published all of our data. Took all of our data about people and companies and published it. That was in 2004. And there was tremendous resistance inside the company for that move as well. People say, if we publish all of our data, why would anybody buy from us? And my answer was, if nobody knows about us, nobody's going to buy anyway. So we better at least get some recognition. So we published all of our data, which many times was wrong, as I said before. And we got some issues with that. But we gradually started to get a lot of traffic. Why? Because it turns out that searching for people is the most common search on Google. And how do I know that? Because we were talking to Microsoft. They were very interested in what we were doing. And they told us that what they measured is that the #1 search, kind of a concept search, is names of people. What we didn't understand is when they talk about names of people, more than half of it was looking for all kinds of celebrities and singers and models and what have you. But it doesn't matter. It was names of people. So it's a very, very common search. And because we had no competitors on that, we started showing up very consistently in those searches. I don't know the numbers today at ZoomInfo. Maybe you guys know how many visitors we get every month? How many?
We get millions of directories.
Millions of searches for the directory. It became the #1 way of reaching out to potential customers, because when people saw again and again and again that they get good information about people and companies from ZoomInfo, it became obvious to them that if they want information about people, they should come to ZoomInfo. Now, remember that I sold ZoomInfo to a competitor called Discover.org. Did anybody hear about Discover.org? Exactly, that's the point. ZoomInfo was a well-known brand Discover.org nobody heard about. So when they acquired us or merged with us, they basically did a reverse merge and changed their name, or kept our name as ZoomInfo, because it was a much stronger brand, much stronger technology, which shows you the power of marketing and long tail. TripAdvisor, same thing. What they sell is data aggregated by people, Crunchbase directory, and there are a million of those things. That's the long tail concept. What is the long tail? Means you have a page per item, and there are hundreds of thousands or millions of items, so you create tremendous amount of content, in most cases automatically. And each one of those items have very, very little search. You know, how many people in the world search for Yonatan Stern? 2 a month. But when you have 20 million people, 2 a month of 20 million people becomes a lot of searches. So that's the concept of a long tail. So let's talk about Opster. Well, I'll read it to you. Tools for DevOps engineer to manage and optimize mission-critical Elasticsearch clusters. Did anybody here understand what it does? Very typical, high-tech, who we are. Right? Royal mumbo jumbo. That's the reality. Go to every company, look at their description, and that's what you're going to find. It's true, by the way. Every word in here is true. So it's very hard to explain what Opster does. It's kind of more than monitoring the Elasticsearch, is doing more, but go and explain it. So who are the customers? Well, we tell that. Tools for DevOps engineers, right? So we're going to go after Elasticsearch DevOps engineers. And the question is, what do they search on Google? So literally, before we developed the product, the team sat together and said, what these people search on Google? We need to understand that. Well, it turns out that Elasticsearch produces error logs. Whenever there is a problem, there's an error log. And there were about 1,000 different errors that they have an error log for them. And so what we decided to do is publish a page per error log. So if you get an error log, you just copy paste it into Google, and bang, Opster came up with an answer. What is this error? The problem is we didn't know what the error was. So we kind of created a page. It looked nice, but wasn't great. And we published them because there was no product. Remember, we just started. It was great. And pretty quickly we realized that about 100 of those 1,000 were generating about 80% of the traffic. So the team sat down and took these 100 pages and literally understood what the error was, put real content in there. And today we get about 100,000 targeted visitors a month. Took a while. Remember timeline? I talk about timeline all the time. But here's a great example of how you build marketing for a product that doesn't exist. And the last line is my favorite. Doesn't cost us a penny. Because we want to make money, remember that. So if we had to spend money every month to generate that traffic, we wouldn't be making money. But remember, we need to do an introduction and we need to do a demonstration of the product. So we decided to develop a product called Checkup. And the idea was, remember, we're talking about improving the Elasticsearch cluster. So we developed a product called Checkup that if you put a few files, it will analyze it and tell you the health of your system. And we get 600 new users a month sign up and run Checkup. We have about 12,000 registered users for this. Really great success, very strong brand name in the Elasticsearch community. Just one little problem. Not enough leads. So we do get leads, we do grow, but just not enough leads to make us excited. Why? Honestly, we don't know. Terra incognita, we just don't know. Every single meeting, I ask, why don't we get more leads? And every single meeting, we come up with new ideas. But luckily, the company is doing well, so we have time to explore and understand. But just to show you the complexities of life. So let's take another example, BeeBuddy. BeeBuddy is one of those internal projects we're playing with. It's a platform where people can schedule a video meeting with an empathic buddy who will give them full attention. Basically, it's the idea you feel lonely, you're bored, whatever, you want to talk to somebody, you can kind of rent a buddy. You go on our website, which doesn't exist, and select the buddy you want to talk to, click a button, and you can have a conversation for a fee. Okay? So, who are the competitors? It turns out that there's a whole bunch of competitors. I won't bore you. The most interesting thing is Fiverr. Turns out that there are a lot of ladies who sell these empathic services on Fiverr.
Is it live buddy or
live.
animated?
Live. Some person, real person talking.
Okay.
Yeah, real person talking. Remember, we are now at the phase of marketing, no product yet. But I wanted to talk to you about a market island and what do we mean by that. So we needed to figure out the marketing. Remember, marketing first. So we came up with this concept of saying, let's go to Facebook, put an ad, and ask people to give us feedback on that ad. So with about $3,000 budget, we did a campaign, and we got 114 potential users and buddies to answer a questionnaire, and we had 25 face-to-face interviews with people, understanding what they want. But most importantly, we figure out a way how we can build the marketing. Because we spent $3,000 and we already talked to so many people, we can easily make money when we start charging money for this. So we kind of validated that we have at least one market island through Facebook. And again, I'm trying to remember, this is just talking about one guiding principle called marketing first. Okay? I'm just giving you enough examples to see the diversity of ideas that you have to bring in here to figure out how can I talk to customers, potential customers, and make them react. And that's a market island that you can start making money on. So what did we learn? They would pay $75 for a 1-hour meeting. So if we take about 20-25% of it, it's not that bad. They would pay more if the buddy is available now. I want to talk to somebody now. And they want to search by all kinds of criteria. Not very interesting. Okay, so that's the same slide you saw before. It ends in 2012. What happens afterwards? So we figured out how to generate email addresses, how to generate phone numbers. And we were very successful at penetrating the sales market. And you can see the impact of it. So this is the growth of revenues. When I left the company in 2018, we were doing $95, $98 million in sales. And even more interesting is the growth in profits. So the company we're putting, I don't remember what year it was, when we added $1 million a month to the bank. And let me tell you, that was one of the best feelings ever to add $1 million in profit every month in the bank. So how do you build a profitable company? Well, what I want to show you now is just a kind of almost a laundry list, because I talked only about one guiding principle, this entire thing. So there are many of them. How do you start marketing before you have a product? I talked and described. Google is your best friend. The concept of market islands, I talked. What is the business model and its far-reaching implications? So what is a business model? Well, we are all exposed to business models. We just don't think about them in that way. I'll give you an example. How do you pay for electricity? By usage, right? How do you pay for water? By usage. How do you pay for internet? Why is internet different than electricity and water? How would the world look today if you paid per gigabyte? Where would Netflix be? I moved to America. I'm Israeli, obviously, one at a time. In '89. In Israel at the time, there were a lot of cell phones. Everybody was using a cell phone. Europe, everybody was using a cell phone. I came to America and I was shocked. When I asked somebody for their cell phone number, they kind of didn't want to give it to me. They only gave it to close friends and family. Why? Turns out that there was a slight change, slight difference between the way that phones were charged. In Israel, it was like a landline. You make a call, you pay for it. You get a call, you don't pay for it, right? If anybody calls you on your landline, you don't pay for it. Same was in America, except that for cell phones, you pay for what they called airtime. Doesn't matter who initiated the call, every minute cost money. If every minute costs money, I'm not going to give you my phone number. Forget it. Business model, small change. Some product manager made a decision. Took years before the rate of usage of cell phones in America matched that in Europe and Israel. One simple decision. And even in Israel, you know, you paid per minute. Now virtually all of us are paying a flat fee. Why? Because they figure out it increases use and it doesn't cost more money. So just to show you an example of business models. Give you another example. Two companies that deliver food, 10bis and Volt. Are they the same? Not really. 10bis, their customers are companies. Volt, the customers are you. So if it is a company, most companies have a budget. You can eat for 1,000 shekels a month, whatever you want to eat, right? What happens if on the 28th of the month I ate only 600 shekels? What am I going to do with the 400 shekels? If I don't eat a lot, I'm going to lose the money. And no employee is willing to lose company's money, okay? They are going to eat the 400 shekels comes what? Doesn't matter. They're going to eat that 400 shekels, if it is coin. All right? So what did 10bis do? They allow you to use the money to buy in the supermarket. They allow you to use the money in buying whatever you want, right? Volt doesn't allow you to do that because you are the customer. So they focus on making you happy. They measure the time it got the food to you and all of that stuff. So you see two companies because they have same principles, same service, but because they have two different customers, they evolve in two very, very different directions. So the notion of a business model is very, very critical as you start your company, and you have to think about it. Innovate as you go. So terra incognita, there is no way you know what you're going to do a year from now. So you need to put a target where you want to be when you grow up and innovate every single day. What is a brand? I mentioned that before, ZoomInfo, which is not a consumer brand, but still was a brand because we were able to create it and the value it brought us. Big issue. Do you need to be the first to the market? My answer is a resounding no. There's no reason to be the first to the market. When I started CardScan, we needed to buy the technology of optical character recognition, OCR, so I called, there were about 4 or 5 companies that had that technology. I called them, they asked me, what do you want it for? And I said, business card reader, and they started laughing. I said, excuse me, why are you laughing? And he says, well, first of all, we also work on the same product, so you're going to compete with us, but that's okay. But we also have about 10 other customers who already are ahead of you, and some of them are going to the market next week. And I said, yeah, where? And they said, in Comdex. Comdex was the big show. So I went to Comdex, and indeed, there weren't 10, there were 2 or 3 competitors already in the market. So I called my developer, my partner, and I said, listen, we're definitely not the first to the market. And he said something that I still remember and say it all the time. If we are not the first, we're going to be the best. And we became the best. And that's a very important lesson. No need to run. Just be the best you can. And how? The devil is always in the details. Always. Great ideas, 10 a dime. Really. Execution, hard as hell. Focus on execution. How to make money on free products? Many ways of making money on free products. Are customers sensitive to price? At the beginning at Opster, we were talking about charging them per hour, per this, $3 there, $5 there, and then we said, forget it. $25,000 minimum price to work with us. At the beginning, we said, what, are you nuts? I mean, who's going to pay $25,000 minimum price? Turns out that a lot of people pay $25,000. So you just see that there is a myth that customers are sensitive to price. They are sensitive to the value they get, not to the price. The urgent versus the important. All of us, all the time, pay attention to urgent at the expense of the important. How do you build a core founding team? Continuous incremental improvement goes with attention to details. When and how raise money. How to increase subscription renewals, and many, many, many more guiding principles. So it's a whole world. That's why I'm writing a book. That's what we're going to work on at the SmartUp Academy. So we got back to the SmartUp Academy as a profession. And how does it work? So it's a residency program. You learn by building your own company. And SmartUp becomes a co-founder in the company, staying with you for years. Remember, we talked about it takes a long time. So we stay the time, whatever it is. We work with you in setting up the strategy and the execution. The devil is in the details. I keep saying that. It's not we tell you, here's the direction, go take it. It's just not going to work. We have weekly or bi-weekly, depending as the companies mature. It becomes bi-weekly or once a month, doesn't matter. But the frequency of the meeting depends on the status of the company. And we do have seminars and meetings with all the companies so they can share what they learn from one another. You are now present in one of the lectures. We're going to have many of those, talking about many of the subjects I brought up. We help you in fundraising, in recruiting, and the basics. There are a lot of basics that you need to learn from marketing and sales tools. There are a lot of tools to financial reports. How do you create operational reports, and so forth and so on. So who is the Academy for? We have 5 different audiences. Founders at any stage of their company, companies that want to do better, people who want to be entrepreneurs, investors who want to participate, and people who just want to learn. The reason I go fast is because I detail each one of them. So at any stage of their company, you're an entrepreneur with or without experience. You have a project you believe in, and you work full-time on your project. So that's what makes you a founder. You already made the commitment. You left your paying job, and that's what you do. You have or you don't have co-founders or the team, and you have a demo or you don't have, we don't really care. And you need help in taking this idea, and you're 24/7 yet you work on it, and try to help you to make it a reality. So that's audience number 1, the obvious audience. Companies that want to do better. Out of the companies that I described that already are at the SmartUp Academy, Two are already existing company, Bioform, that is already a profitable company, and TikTok sitting there, the last line. Hi. That are already doing very well as a profitable company. Can I use your metaphor about Shara guy? So when I was talking to them, I said, why are you talking to me? And they said, we feel we're stuck in Shara guy and we want to get to Yerushalayim. So I thought that was a really, really good description of, we're doing well, but we can do much better than we are. So your company is already established, you have a team working, you raised or you didn't raise money, they didn't raise money, Bioform didn't raise money. And preferably, you have a product, you're already paying customers, and you are profitable. We love those that are profitable. Why? Because they already understood the value of that. People who want to be entrepreneurs. This is a very important audience for us. Why? Because a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't have an idea. They work at another company. They see everybody around them talking about raising money and being successful, and they really want to participate. But honestly, they have no clue what to do, how to do that. So if you are like that, and you want to learn how to build a successful company, what we can do is pair you up with a company that we work with, or potentially even with our internal, like BeBuddy or clinical.site. We have a lot of internal ideas that we have, and we don't do anything with them because we don't have the people to work on them. So there's plenty of opportunity to come and work with us in your profession, but meanwhile learn and understand all the other aspects of how do you build a company, a successful company. Interested investors. So you're a professional VC fund or an angel investor. You're interested in having early access to SmartUp companies. And we have some ideas. Because we're saying exit is not important, being profitable is important. So how do you take your money out? At the end of the day, investors, as the name implies, want to put money and get money out. How do you get your money out and make money? So we have ideas how to do that. And there are many people who just want to listen, and they are welcome. You're welcome to our presentations and seminars, receive material, go to our website, participate in some meeting. We have no secrets. You have heard me talk about the companies. I don't believe in secrets. I'm not afraid of competitors. 9 out of 10 companies fail just because they don't execute well, not because they don't have good ideas. So, in all my experience, I always worked with competitors, talked to competitors. It was always useful. I don't think there are a lot of secrets in business. Maybe the formula of Coca-Cola, maybe. But other than that, most companies just fail on not doing the details. So how to apply? Go to our website, smartupacademy.org. There are 5 different forms for the 5 different audiences. Pick the one that fits you and just fill it up. And Libby, where are you? Come here. So Libby is the COO of SmartUp Academy. And basically you are here because of her. She's managing me, don't get fooled. She's managing me. She built the website, she organized that, and thank you. I think you need a... And we just put the website live about a week ago. And so you're welcome to go on the website and please find all the bugs and all the problems and send her an email. We're going to put also a button that says feedback. But we need your feedback. So every good speaker at the end wants you to focus on the most important things he ever said, right? So I want you to have 2 takeaways from this very long and boring talk. Building a startup company is exploring terra incognita, which means regardless of everything, you're going to go into a place you don't really understand. And it takes time, resources, and many dead ends. So you need time. And you must learn how to sustain yourself from the territory. Basically, become profitable as fast as you can. Takeaway number 2 is you can learn how to do that. It is not an art. It is a profession. It has details. You can learn it. And we're willing to teach it. So that's the team. You made it Libby. Ella, please get up. She's the CFO. Thank you. And we also have additional people working with us. And I have 2 questions. Are you ready for the answers? Thanks. If I were to do this presentation again, would you tell a friend to come and listen? Those? Yes. No, show your hands. Everybody. Well, I probably did a good job. Thank you.